Hello, spooky crew. Our tote bag drawing is officially closed, and we just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who entered. We are so grateful for the love and the support, and we have loved reading your reviews. Missed the tote? No worries. We're still sending out high-quality vinyl stickers while supplies last. Just email us proof of your rating and review along with your mailing address to thespookydarlings@gmail.com, and we'll get one headed your way. Quick promise, your address is only for mailing the sticker. No emails, no selling info, no funny business, just spooky gratitude. Thanks again for supporting the show. You are the reason we do this. You're listening to The Spooky Darlings, a podcast where three sisters share stories of true crime, the paranormal, and anything mysterious. Today, I, Nettie, will tell you about Christopher Wilder, also known as the Beauty Queen Killer, also known as the Snapshot Killer, also known as one of the most terrible human beings to ever walk this earth. Before we begin, we want to give a quick content warning. This episode contains discussion of sexual assault, murder, violence, and torture. We know these subjects can be difficult, so please take care of yourself while listening. If you need to skip this episode, that's okay. We completely understand. We will have some lighter fare for you soon. Now, on to the episode. Sisters,
What is it?
are you ready? Today,
I don't know.
today, I'm going to tell you about the Beauty Queen Killer, also known as the Snapshot Killer, Christopher Wilder. So,
Can't wait.
anyone who met Christopher Wilder in the late 70s or early 80s, where he lived in Miami, Florida, would be impressed. He had a lot of money. He had a successful business as a building contractor, and he also dabbled in property development. He had a nice waterfront home in the south of Palm Beach. He was a race car driver, and he owned a white Porsche 911, which is the car he
Ooh.
raced. He lived a life of fancy restaurants, eating out, although he really rarely drank except for show. He would order like fancy cocktails.
Because he wanted to be in control.
Yeah, probably, yes. And
When you say for show, you mean he ordered them but wouldn't drink them?
he would drink them very slowly, but it was always, he'd never drink alone.
It was always like
one cocktail, and it was always a fancy, manly cocktail. Like there was a specific one, but I can't remember what it was. Something like an old fashioned, but not an old fashioned. And just the women he dated noted that he really only did it to impress people.
Okay.
So he always had a pretty girl on his arm. But what's interesting is often these pretty girls were hired girls that he paid to be with them. And he actually didn't even care who knew it.
Okay.
He was very charming, though. Women who interacted with him in a regular way, not in the other ways we're going to learn about, actually found him very charming. They said he knew how to treat a lady, that he was old fashioned. He was very attentive to the parents of the women that he dated, sending them flowers, asking them questions, spending time with them, inviting them out to places. But
So all very external, it sounds like.
yeah, I would say that's correct. Like everything was a show. He was also really calm, and he seemed very cool and collected, especially when you first met him. But women who interacted with him noted that there was still something strange. And that may be why in around 1981, he consulted a dating service. And I have the transcript here from the book Arranged to Kill by Anne Rule.
Ooh.
So in 1981, he went on to a dating service where he had to record his profile, a video profile, and then it was sent to women. And this, I should say my sources, just like briefly, I'll put the sources in the show notes, but my information came from the book, The Snapshot Killer, written by Duncan McNab. And this was written in 2017. So it's got a lot of recent research, and it's mostly updated, although there have been a few things that are new since 2017.
Oh, cool.
And then I also got some information from A Rage to Kill by Anne Rule, and then some websites that I will put
In the show notes.
All right, this is Christopher Wilder's dating profile from 1981. I want to date, he said. I want to meet and enjoy the company of a number of women. I want to meet someone special. I have quite a few playthings at home, he bragged. I like sports cars, but bar hopping is not and never has been one of my greater joys. I would like a family one day. Between the ages of 14 and 24, I was heavy into surfing. You thought I was going to say I was looking for a woman between the ages of 14 and 24, which he was, but he didn't
Gross.
say that here. It is gross. I was heavy into surfing. That was my sole game in life. Arriving here in Miami and finding no surf, I went from one extreme to the other. I was completely non-work oriented prior to coming here. So that's just part of it. There's probably more if you watch the profile.
Okay.
I'm going to start with his childhood and tell you about how this kid was raised. And I will say it's interesting because there's a lot of discussion about, serial killers and the things that happen to them in their formative years that can cause them to kind of become the way they were.
Right.
And often you can trace it back to head injuries. You can trace it back to abusive parents. There's
that triad, like head injury, wetting the bed, and like abusive parents.
He actually didn't have any of those as far as we know. And so the kind of consensus is that he was actually just this way. This is just who he was. And he started showing signs of it as a young child. So he was born March 13th in 1945 to an American father named Coley Wilder and an Australian mother in Sydney, Australia. And Coley was in the U.S. Navy, which is how he ended up in Australia. He was in World War II. He was in Pearl Harbor attack. Wow. And he was on a ship that wasn't attacked, but he had a lot of PTSD, like a lot of veterans from World War II that he carried with him throughout his life. So Coley and June got married in Sydney, Australia. They had Chris, and then they moved to the United States when Chris was just about a year old. And Coley continued his career with the Navy. They lived in San Francisco, Las Vegas, the Philippines, Norfolk, Virginia, and they added 2 more boys to the family while they were in the U.S.
Okay, so no wonder he was able to slip into Australian to American accent so well.
He was 12 or 13 when he moved to Australia. So his formative years were all in the U.S.
Okay.
Which, did him favors when he went back to Australia because it was like the height of surf culture and the Beach Boys and Elvis Presley, and American culture was so cool. They moved back in the late 50s to Australia, settling in Ryde, Australia, which is close to where June's family lived, and they had 1 more son. So a total of 4 boys in the family. The parents were described by neighbors as being really good parents. June was very loving and attentive. The father, they said, was strict, struggled with alcohol, but really handled his alcohol well, didn't seem abusive, even though he was strict with the boys. Coley, the father, definitely used his military training when he disciplined the boys. There was lots of yes, sir, no, sir, which we will see later in Chris with the way he treated his victims.
Ooh.
Chris was an unspectacular student, very average. He preferred sports, and at 15, he failed his intermediate certificate. And they do this in a lot of European countries and in Australia, where you kind of go to high school to a certain point, and then if you don't have the academics, you move on to a trade school. And my exchange student that I had last year explained to me that's how it was in Germany.
Oh.
You sort of, at a certain age, kind of test what direction you're going to go. And a lot of people just end up going to trade school, either because they don't have the academics or because they're not interested in it. His parents were super disappointed, but his father, and I think that maybe this is part of where it starts, is the parents were always making excuses. His father blamed it on Chris's inability to understand the Australian school system. He did a carpentry apprenticeship, and he actually got paid and started to make great money. And he really scrimped and saved, and he was very careful with money. And as soon as he got his license, he bought himself a car. And this made him pretty popular. And his brother, Stephen, described him as having it made. He was blonde, he was good looking, he was athletic, and he had an American accent, which was gold. And he had a car, which made him popular because kids, especially boys, actually didn't really like Wilder. Like, there's no one that has come forward and said they were a childhood friend of Wilder's. There are a lot of boys that have come forward and said, he gave us rides. We, took advantage of that. But all of us thought he was a little bit weird. And he was really cool and calm and collected around women and girls, but around guys, he was shifty. He couldn't look you in the eye. He had trouble with male relationships.
Right.
So the Wilders were proud until Chris shattered their hopes in 1963 when he was 17. So Chris was part of a group that was known as the Ride Boys because they would all get in Chris's car and they would ride to the beach, and they were all surfers. However, it has been contested whether Chris was actually a surfer because he hung out with the surfing boys and sort of acted like a surfer, but no one can really actually remember him surfing. And as you read in his dating profile, he claimed he had been an avid surfer from 14 to 24. But it sounds like he might have just gone and played the part of a surfer without actually doing it.
Right.
So on January 4th, 1963, Chris and a group of boys, and he was 17 at this time, and he was with 2 15-year-old boys, were with him that day. And they were not boys he knew very well. He lived a little bit of ways and he drove into the town, and these were local boys. So they were at the beach and there was another group of kids. And one of the boys that Chris was hanging out with was dating one of the girls, and the girl's younger sister was there. She was 13. And this 13-year-old was a little bit interested in the Yank, which was Chris, because he had the American accent. Just not like romantically interested, but just more like intrigued by the American. It was like,
and when you're 13,
right?
Like,
it was
it's
fun
just
and
kind of that teenage like knowledge.
hopefulness. Yeah, it was just fun. It was like, oh, here's someone different. And
Yeah.
so Chris ended up coaxing the girl to come for a ride in his car, and he brought the two teenage boys along with him, the two 15-year-olds. There's a little bit of varying stories. The boys say the girl got into the car willingly. One of her friends said later that they forced her into the car. But it sounds like she actually got in the car willingly, just thought she was going for a ride, and then it turned into something really quite terrible.
Oh, no.
So they got in the car, and either Chris was leaving or she was leaving for a trip, because he kept saying, I'm going to give you a going away present. And the way he was saying it really made her uncomfortable. So she asked him to take her home. He drove like he was going to take her home, drove by her house, but didn't take her home. Then he drove her to a quarry, which was an active quarry. And this is where I think it takes pre-planning. It was an active quarry, but that day it was not being used. And so it's like he had to have known which quarries were in use and which ones weren't being run, to know it was abandoned. He went there, he asked the two 15-year-old boys to get out of the car and to leave him. And they walked away. And both of these boys have expressed so much regret. And I'm not trying to leave them blameless. And we talked a little bit about this when I did the Wanda Beach murders. It's the same case.
Yeah.
But they walked away. Chris got in the back of the car. The girl started screaming. They turned and looked and saw that he was removing her clothes. And then they just kind of turned their heads for about 10 minutes.
Oh, no.
And then looked back, and Chris was in the driver's seat and the girl was putting her clothes back on. And they were really horrified.
It's like that moment where you just freeze.
I think that they froze. They were also 15. I mean, it's not an excuse, but Chris was 17. And I think that they felt intimidated by this older boy.
Yeah. But, and also, just don't rape.
It's really awful. And so they got back in the car, and they were shocked that the girl was in the back of the car crying. One of the boys got in next to her, and Chris said to them, do you guys want to fuck her? And they both declined. And the girl was crying, but he was so casual about it and like cavalier that the boys just were blown away. He actually he drops the girl off at home, and she says to him, I'm going to tell my parents, I'm going to get you in so much trouble. Wilder did not show back up at the beach that summer. So this was like kind of towards the end of the summer season. Well, maybe a month left in the summer season, and he did not show back up. But on February 11th, so this was a little more than a month later, the police show up at Wilder's doorstep and his parents. And they arrested Wilder, and they had also arrested the two other boys because the girl had told her parents, and they pressed charges. And all three boys were taken to like a children's shelter is what they called in Australia, but it's like juvenile detention basically, where Chris spent 9 days. And he in the future would say that he was really treated horribly there and was attacked and beaten up, but there's actually no evidence of it. There were no scars, no bruising or anything like that. But it becomes apparent that he, for several of his therapists later in life, spun a lot of stories that would create a damaged childhood, but the evidence for these stories is not there.
Right.
Not saying it didn't happen. I mean, I think that probably juvenile detention is rough, but what he said happened.
Sounds like he was also probably on the older end of kids in juvie.
He was on the older end. And even though he wasn't large later in life, like he was an early bloomer. So he was tall compared to a lot of other teenagers. He was kind of tall and built because he was like a little bit of an early bloomer. Wilder completely changed the story when he went in to tell the judge. He said that he was just there hanging out with these surfy boys, and surfy was sort of like the term used to describe these wayward youths that spent all their days surfing, and that he had been coerced into the sexual attack by the other boys, that it had been the boys' idea, and he was an unwilling participant. He said, yes, he did participate, but it was against his better judgment, and he knew it was wrong. Meanwhile, the boys' stories match, and the girls' story matches. So the victim is telling the same story that the two 15-year-old boys are saying. But guess who is believed? Anyone want to guess?
I hate this guess, Chris.
Wilder is believed. largely in part to his father being military and coming in and talking to the judge about what a good boy he was, what a good son he was, how obviously he needed to do, there were some holes in Chris's education and he needed to help out as a father. There was like some talk like, well, he's very close to his mother and I might need to step in, you know.
Ugh.
With that.
Also blaming the mom. Great. I know I said this in the last one, but it's just so infuriating. It's that Brock Turner situation where the dad said to the judge, "Don't punish my boy for the rest of his life for 20 minutes of bad action." And it's just like, no, punish him. He deserves to be punished. He deserves to have his life altered too.
Yes,
because he made a bad choice.
And I mean, in this, the Brock Turner thing, that was way more recent. This was in the 60s.
Yeah. So and we still have this mentality today. It's just,
but it was even worse. Like in the 60s, it's like the victim blaming, how it's the girl's fault. Like, oh, well, did she consent? I mean, this is
well, she got in the car. That, always. They're going to try to say that's implied consent if you get in the car even,
Awful.
It's pretty terrible. So, the probation officer gave his report that he felt like Christopher was a great kid who was drawn into the offense by the Surfy boys who were pure trouble. And he was sentenced to 12 months in prison, but the sentence was suspended upon entering into a good behavior bond. Basically, Chris just made a promise to not get in trouble for a year, to have good behavior for a year.
Whatever.
I mean, and luckily the two teenage boys also had similar sentences, that the two 15-year-olds, I think they each got sentenced to 9 months, but got out, like didn't have to serve. They were on probation. Chris would have been 18 if he had had to serve his sentence, and he would have had to serve it in an adult penitentiary or whatever. Right. And that was good for him, honestly. So last time I did the Wanda Beach murders, and I'm just going to briefly talk about that. So in 1965, so this rape was in 1963. So 2 years later, in 1965, Christopher became a suspect in the Wanda Beach murders. And briefly, what those are is on January 11th, 1965, two 15-year-old girls, best friends and neighbors, Marianne Schmidt and Christine Sherrock, were sexually assaulted, then murdered at Wanda Beach near Cronulla in Sydney. They were discovered the next day, their bodies partially buried in the sand dunes. Wilder eventually became one of the main suspects in that murder, along with two other men, Alan Bassett, who was a convicted felon who had murdered a woman in a violent fashion, and Derek Percy, who was a convicted child murderer. Ugh. So both of these men became the lead suspects along with Wilder. That case is still unsolved, but many of the detectives feel like it was Wilder, especially with what's to come and what they learned. So he was a suspect. However, it is unclear as to whether or not he was actually questioned on the first round of the Wanda Beach murders, because what they know is that they took a list of teenage sexual offenders, because if you remember, a teenage boy had been identified walking away with the girls.
And he looked like a surfy, and Chris looked like a surfy.
Totally fit the description of Chris. And in fact, there was a composite sketch done based on the little brother. So Marianne's little brother, Wolfgang, is the one that saw the boy walking with the girls. And he did like a sketch, a composite sketch with the police. And then they took that sketch and did age progression. And I could not find it. I just heard about it. I searched. I couldn't find it anywhere, but the age progressed sketch looks like Christopher Wilder.
Oh
like uncannily looks like Christopher Wilder. It's just kind of crazy.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Nothing came of him being on the initial list of suspects. And then in 1969, he was to be questioned because his wife of 1 year and his mother-in-law turned him into the police as a probable
perpetrator.
That's what I was looking for. Probable perpetrator in the Wanda Beach murders. So I'm going to tell you real quick about his marriage, and I'm going to use the name Jen. The wife's name, she's asked for it to be kept private. I'll use the name Jen for her. So it is common, like in stories about Wilder, that the marriage only lasted a week, but that's not true. It actually lasted about a year, a terrible year, according to Jen,
poor Jen.
The wife. So Wilder was 22 when he approached Jen and her family at the beach. They were at Palm Beach in Australia, not in Florida. There's two Palm Beaches. Mm-hmm. Jen was 20. She was a teacher, and she was there with her family and her 15-year-old sister. And they were at this place in the beach where the parents were kind of up by the parking lot sitting in the shade, and then the girls were down on the beach playing and hanging out in the sand. And they walked by Wilder several times throughout the day, and Jen remembered that he was watching them, but he never said anything to them until they packed up and started to leave. Then he approached the family, he introduced himself, and he offered to take the whole family to another beach a little bit a ways called Worrywood Beach the next day. So they
and worry would they?
And good one.
Good. Love it.
Worry would they? So he offered to take them, and they went the next day. And then he started calling on the family often. But one thing that Jen noticed and the father noticed is that Christopher's attentions actually seemed to be on the 15-year-old daughter, and he was 22. So the father took him aside and he was like, look, this is inappropriate. She's too young. This isn't a good thing. And so Christopher was like, oh, okay. Like his response was, all right. And he then focused his attention on Jen.
To get into the family, probably.
Yeah, I think so. I think that he had this idea that he wanted a family and wanted marriage, and it was just like, which avenue? But his attraction was to that kind of like teenage girl. There's a name for it, like an ebophile or something. It's like when you're not a pedophile, but you're attracted to girls that are post-pubescent. I think it's
but still underage, like still.
That seems to be
in their adolescence.
What Chris was like, attracted to very young looking, but developed females.
Also disgusting.
Yes.
Don't do that.
I mean, unless you are a boy of that age.
Yeah, you could be the same age or within a year.
So Jen and Chris started dating, and it just started out as a really perfect, normal relationship. He was pretty charming to the family, and Jen really liked him. He treated her really well and respectfully, but the family started to get kind of some red flags about him, just that his attention still seemed to be a lot on the younger sister.
What do you think that looked like? Probably just at like functions, just watching her a lot?
I think, yeah, just a lot of
eyes on her.
Mm-hmm. It said, and one of the things I read, it just said that she noticed and the father noticed that he just paid a lot of attention to her. So at one point during like early on in their dating, he drove her to a remote place on the way to the beach, and he got out of the car and he put a blanket down and he pulled out a camera and he said, I'm going to take some photos of you. So he started out by taking just some normal photos, and she was like, oh, okay, posing for him. And then he reached over and grabbed her shirt and like ripped the buttons off. And he demanded she take off her clothes. And she said she wouldn't do it. And he said, if you don't take off your clothes and let me photograph you, I am going to have sex with you right here. And she started crying and she was like, please don't make me do this. And please don't do this. I will never go on a date with you again. So she threatened him, and he acquiesced, and he didn't assault her, and he didn't make her take off her clothes, but he eventually did talk her into that. But she kept dating him. This is what blows me away. It's like he showed his true colors, and she had a chance to step out, but she kept dating him.
I wonder if, because I had my time of dating real bad guys. I wonder if it's just that thing of like raised in a culture of like, you are a woman, you need to be desirable to men. I don't know. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. I think it probably was that feeling. And she was, 20 and probably felt like it was time for her to settle down.
Yeah, geez.
Well, it's not just like the idea of needing to be desirable to men, but it's also that idea of like, in very conservative religions of teaching girls that they are the guard of their chastity. So like that didn't probably, I mean, at least I don't know what her religious background was, but I know that in our religion, that would have kind of been like, oh, well, what did she do to make the boy feel tempted by that? There's so much that girls internalize in those puritanical.
That poor boy, she was posing for him. What was he supposed to do? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, going alone with him to the beach, she was practically begging for it. You know what I mean? It's like that kind of disgusting mentality. Yeah.
So the parents at this point, she never told them about this incident, but they were still not fans. They had a bad vibe, and they told June very explicitly that they did not approve and they wanted her to stop dating him. But she was 20. She could make her own choices. So she moved out of their house and she moved into a woman's hostel. And then they got engaged. And a few days after she moved into the hostel, Wilder just showed up at the family home, didn't even knock. The mother came out of the bedroom and he was standing in the hallway. And he totally propositioned her, the mother. He said, I want to talk to you. Come sit over here by me. And she's like, no, I'm not going to sit by you. You can come into the kitchen and you can sit at a stool and we can have a conversation. And then he said, I want to know something about sex. And she's like, well, you need to go ask your father. Why would you be asking me about that? And then he said, I saw you in a bikini and I want to take pictures, like at some beach vacation they were with, and I want to take pictures of you. And then he gestured to her bedroom and he said, I want you in there. And she said, get out of here or I'll kill you. He didn't respond at all. No response. So she said, get out of here or I'll call the police. And he said, you wouldn't dare. And then she said, wouldn't I? How do you expect to marry my daughter after what you said to me? So she told Jen what he said to her, and Jen did not break off the engagement. She stayed engaged to him. They got married February 17th, 1968. So just over a year, just barely over a year after they met. And he had started to show, before they got married, he started to show his violent side. Like he punched out a glass panel at the parents' house when they were over there for dinner. And so the marriage actually started out pretty normal. Jen said for the first few weeks, it was very normal, she felt like a healthy, normal sex life, healthy, normal marriage. But then he started getting really crude, really derogatory. He was demanding sex 3 times a night, every night. That's too much. Painful positions. And he would use like funny voices.
Ew, I hate
which
that.
reminded me of the Golden State Killer, how he would like get a high-pitched voice. He would say, if she would cry, he would say, don't cry. Like he would get into a high-pitched voice and use weird voices. And so then a few months after the wedding, she was sorting through his, like putting clothes away, sorting through his dresser and organizing things. And she found hidden in one of his drawers, his photography equipment, a bunch of photography equipment, and a bunch of photos of nude or scantily clad women that she did not know around beaches. And she noticed that a lot of these women were wearing her clothing that had gone missing, her underwear, her bikinis, her clothing. Yeah, I was so mad. I'd be like, what the? Was my favorite bikini.
I would be like, you know what? Sharing is caring. I'm just kidding. No, I wouldn't.
Sharing is caring.
That'd be the worst
Did you
thing
guys
to
ever
find.
watch Love on the Spectrum? Like I told you to. Did you watch the part where he gives her the candy and he's like, sharing is caring?
I sure wish I could try some of those gummies. Jason and I are rewatching it actually. So we just watched this episode. And he goes, sharing. I would sure like to try those gummies. After all, sharing is caring. And she's just like, I'm trying to save my appetite for dinner. And I just think it'd be better if you just got your own.
This was
after he gifted it to her.
It's so funny. It's so good. He's so sweet.
He's so sweet.
She is the most adorable. I love her, Abby. It's really done well. I was nervous that it was like taking advantage of people, on the spectrum, but really it's so respectful. And if anything, I feel like it gives so much more
insight,
empathy and insight to people on the spectrum. Anyways, back to the story, back to the murder. She found these photos, right? The scantily clad women. And then she is convinced that he tried to kill her during their marriage on at least 3 occasions. One of them was she couldn't brake at a stop sign and she ended up running through an intersection. And luckily she didn't hit anyone or she was safe too. But when she went and got her car checked out, her brake fluid had been drained. And with the type of car she had, the mechanic said, this isn't necessarily like super abnormal that your brake fluid might have leaked. But if you've been getting your car regularly checked, it shouldn't be a problem. And Chris was very into cars and he took care of all the maintenance on her car. And he was working on her car all the time. Then later, like a month later or something, the steering failed. So 2 really close calls where it could have been dangerous. She could have killed someone else or killed herself, but luckily she didn't. And again, it looked like someone had tampered with her steering. She said that they were starting to fight a lot. She said their marriage was getting really unhappy because she had found out he was cheating on her after she found those photos. He was cheating on her with multiple women and he was just unrepentant about it.
Was her evidence for this, for the cheating, was it just the photos or was there another incident that led her to...
Photos, and she asked him and he didn't deny it.
Okay.
And he would just blatantly go out all the time. But was he cheating with her or was he assaulting women?
Yeah, serial assaulter.
He came home with scratches on his back or neck. And when she asked him about it, he said he did it to himself, but he was a nail biter and had no fingernails. So how? One might ask, how?
Right.
And like you probably want to assume the worst thing your spouse is capable of is infidelity. You don't want to be like, they're out there
Murdering and raping.
raping, murdering
Yeah.
and
Well, and there's just so much, I mean, I think it's less so now, but in the past, so much shame around rape for
Yeah.
women because they, so often heavily made it seem like it was their fault, that I think
Yeah.
that how many women were probably assaulted by this man and never came forward.
never came forward.
Yeah.
So,
Well, in addition, just as the, just from the perspective of his poor wife, also, like there was so much shame around being cheated on. And there was always that narrative of it being
You're
your
not taking care of
fault. If if your husband looks for it elsewhere, it's because you weren't giving it or whatever. I mean, that was a really common narrative.
And as we know now, that
It's
narrative
really
is
gross.
wrong.
it is wrong.
Yes. Yeah, it's very wrong. Incorrect. False.
It is incorrect. So he tried to trick her younger sister. And I did briefly talk about this when we did the Wanda Beach murders, but I'm going to revisit it because it's the creepiest thing in the world. He called her younger sister, tried to disguise his voice, and he said, "Hey, were you at a wedding? I saw a photo of you at a wedding, and are you interested in being a model?" And after she talked to him for a minute, she was like, "Chris, I know this is you." And then he called back and disguised his voice again. And he's like, "I hear you were talking to my employer, my number two. This is the Identity Studio. And we really do want you to be a model. We saw a picture of you at a wedding and we think you'd be perfect." So this time she bought into it and she actually like scheduled an appointment, made a time to meet this guy and to go like get her picture taken. And she's probably 16 at this point because, a year has gone by since they met. She was 15 when they met. And then this guy would call her back and like talk to her about the modeling gig. And eventually her mother answered the phone. And the mother knew immediately it was Chris. And she was like, "Chris, I know this is you. Stop hassling my daughter." And then she hung up on him. And then she called him back. He called her back again and still tried to convince her and claimed to be the boss. So yeah. But the mom put a stop to it. She just said, "She's not here. She's at school," and then ended it. And then she told her daughter, "That was Chris. You're not going anywhere with that creep. You're not meeting him. I'm sorry you were not offered a model job. You did not just get discovered." And so then a few months later, Jen woke up to the smell of gas. I wrote sound of gas in my notes, but it's smell. The smell of gas. That's going to blow the decibels. I'm going to have to tone that way down in editing. She woke up to the smell of gas and she found that all the windows were closed, which they never had their windows closed in their house. They always kept them open for a nice cross breeze. And the stove jets were turned on full blast, which was weird. She knows she turned them off. And then she saw that Wilder was just out in the yard staring in at her. So she was like, "Chris, what's going on? Did you know these were on?" And he just denied it. So that was sort of like the precursor to the end of their marriage. She knows she's cheating. She has suspicions about him.
She knows he's cheating.
Did I say she?
Yeah.
She knows he's cheating. Okay, so around this time, there was a young nurse, and her name is anonymous. We don't know her name, but she was sunbathing on Manly Beach. And this was the beach closest to where Chris and Jen, which is not her real name, lived. And she was sunbathing, and a young man approached her and asked her if she had done any modeling. And she said, "No, I'm a nurse. I'm not a model. I'm a nurse. And I'm very happy with my job." And so then he persisted. He's like, "Well, what about part-time? I mean, think about how much money you could make just for a couple hours of work." And she started thinking about how little she was making as a beginning nurse. She had just started, and how nice it would be just for just a few hours of work to be able to make that extra money and cushion her, bills. So she listened to him. And she still declined. And he pressured her some more. And so finally, she agreed to do it as long as they stayed at that beach because she didn't want to get in a car with him and go anywhere. So they spent a couple hours and he did some photos just right there. And then he said, "Oh, hey, why don't you hop in a car with me? I'm headed up to Bondi Beach a little north. I've got to do something up there." And she was like, "No, thank you. I don't want to go." And he's like, "I'd really like to get some photos of you up there though. While I'm up there, I think it would just be really good for your portfolio if we had this in the background. I think it would be really important." So he talked her into it. So she agreed and she got in the car and he coaxed her. He used a lot of pressure into doing some partially clothed photos. And she felt terrible after. He didn't threaten her so much, but he was like, you'll have to do this. This is how you make the good money. There's nothing wrong with this. Like, just used a lot of pressure. And he's like, and he also said, no one will see these except for me, the professional photographer, and the modeling scouts. Like, these are just for casting purposes.
Oh,
No one will
no.
see them. So she agreed, and she let him take some topless photos of her. She also at some point had given him her work information, so he knew where she worked and kind of her schedule,
Oh,
all as part of the
Oh,
modeling
no.
gig. And he dropped her off at home afterwards, so he also had her home address. Well, a couple weeks later, he called her at work, and he said, I want you to come and do some more photos for me. And she said, no, absolutely not. I don't want to, because she had had time to clear her head. And he said, if you do not come and do the photos with me and don't do what I say, I am going to release these photos I have of you, these partially nude photos. I'm going to send them to your
No.
boss. So he's like, so you will meet me. So she met him. And he kept blackmailing her and forcing her to do increasingly indecent photos in sexual positions, increasing, like, full nude.
Oh, this
And
poor
eventually
woman.
it came into sexual assault, where he threatened her and like with sexual coercion as blackmail. Well, eventually he made the mistake of calling her at home, and her mother answered. And her mother just got a bad feeling. And she's like, who is that American? Because he was using his American accent. And she just broke down and told her mother everything.
Ugh.
And she's like, he's been photographing me for months and, forcing me to have sex with him, threatening to release these pictures. So the mother called the police, and they went in and they reported him. And she said she didn't want to give evidence. She didn't want to press charges. Mostly she just felt like this is probably happening to other women. And so she wanted to make sure she did something about it,
Mhm.
because it would be so easy just to say, okay, well, I'm cutting that off and I'm just not going to worry about it and forget about it. But she was really worried about it happening to other women too. And also rumors had started to fly. So the police were like, actually, this isn't the first time we've heard that there's somebody doing this modeling scam that's going up to girls, saying he's a photographer, saying he's a model scout, and then convincing them to take inappropriate pictures. But this was, I think, the first one where it had been the blackmail was evident there and threatening to release the pictures. So one of the victims had gotten his license plate. So they were eventually able to identify him, because he did not identify himself as Christopher Wilder to this nurse. He gave a false name. He actually gave the name Christopher, but it was a different last name. And I don't remember what it was. And so Christopher is starting to get nervous, because the last time he tries to call this nurse, she is like, no, I'm not going to go. I've gone to the police. I don't know if she actually told him she went to the police, but he somehow got it in his head. I think she must have told him, because he got it in his head that the police were after him. And so he sat there on Valentine's Day with his wife, and they were having a Valentine's dinner. And she said he couldn't stop looking out the window, and there was an unmarked police car. And she didn't know it was police because it was an unmarked car, but he knew. They watched him all day. And then they came to the door and knocked, and they said, we're just doing a canvassing because there's been some clothing stolen from clothing lines. And do you know anything about it? And, both Jen and Chris said, no, we don't know anything about it. And an hour later, the police showed up with detectives and arrested Chris and took him into custody. And so we think me and the detectives, we think that initial stop was just to kind of, see if he was home, see if he would come to the door armed or defensive, to kind of assess the situation before who else is there before they actually came into arrest. So they arrested him, and then they had a search warrant. They searched the house. They also let Mrs. Wilder, Jen, pack her stuff, and they took her to her parents' house, and they said, with what we know about this guy, you should never come back to him.
Yeah.
You should never. And she agreed. She was like, I'm not going to.
Oof, thank
So
goodness.
she moved back in with her parents. And then meanwhile, Chris has been arrested and he's being questioned. This became his MO. He confessed to the detective. He agreed with the detective when he said, these women said you do this. He always says, I did, but I didn't realize she was so scared. I did. So he'll confess to it, but then make it gentle. And he'll also say, I know it was wrong, but I also really felt like she consented. He'll say stuff like, I felt there was, he even used the words like a breath of consent in some of his stuff. There was sort of a breath of consent there. And these men bought it. They were like, well, he's sorry. He didn't know. He really believed, with the girls that were underage, he believed
she wanted it.
Yeah, she said no, but when he started to take off her clothes, she stopped fighting. like things like that, which were actual, these are real things that people
Ew.
said. He said, well, I started to take off her pants and she didn't fight me. So I thought that was consent, even though she had fought him and said no while he threatened her up until
Oh, I
the
hate
point taking off his clothes. It's really awful, but it worked for him. It worked. Oh, it just
Ew.
infuriates me. So yeah, I had no idea. She was so scared. Also, I threw the film canister in the water. He was also, there wasn't even any film. I never even had any photos of her to begin with. That was the other thing he told them.
Oh my
So he
God.
never had photos to begin with, but he pretended to throw an empty canister into the water to make her feel better.
Ew.
I think that was like after he sexually assaulted her. He did that like as an appeasement. And then after the sexual assault, he was so chatty and normal. Like, so what do you want to do? So should we just, as if nothing happened, almost trying to gaslight the victim into thinking that nothing abnormal had happened. And he would do
Ew.
this over and over with victim after victim, because he was a serial rapist before he started murdering.
Yeah.
Unless he was the Wanda Beach murderer. In that case, he started murdering very young and then was a serial rapist. And then started murdering again. So
Ew.
we don't know. So he was arrested. He confessed. He basically did a plea deal. He confessed to a gentler version of the crimes and he was let go. Like,
Oh
Got
my.
off easy again.
he got off easy. He was I think he like pled down or something. And
I hate
they
that.
didn't look at his juvenile record. So they didn't know that he had been already accused of rape.
Pattern. Yeah.
Or it was not rape that he was accused of. It was statutory rape is what it was. It was called carnal knowledge. He pled guilty to carnal
Ugh.
knowledge. And that was a lesser charge, which is the same as basically statutory rape, like consent. So basically they were saying, oh, so the girl consented, the 13-year-old. This is back to the 13-year-old. The
Ugh.
girl consented, but she's unable to give consent because she's 13. So we'll say
That
Carnal
case, that makes me
knowledge.
so angry. So angry.
especially 'cause, like, they listened to the victim. Like
Yeah.
she was very clear about what happened to her. And the two boys backed it up. Like 3 people said the same thing and they still believed Chris
And
Wilder.
once again, this is why victims don't come forward. It's because how they are treated by the justice system. There is no justice.
yeah.
Sorry. Okay, go on.
He basically got off for that crime. But then 4 or 5 days later, the mother-in-law and Jen went into the police, and the younger sister all went to the police, and they said, we have information on the Wanda Beach killer. We're pretty sure it's Chris Wilder. And then they had information, and that information was viable enough that they sent it along to the Wanda Beach investigators, the people that were currently investigating it, because it's still unsolved. It was still unsolved at that point and still unsolved today. They decided they needed to bring him in for questioning. However, February 18th was when these people came into the police to report. They went to question him in May. What? May 5th. It took them that long to get everything together to go question him. And he had left for the United States over a month before because he knew he was in trouble. He knew things were happening. He was worried more women would come forward. And so he got out of Dodge.
That is
So
ridiculous.
in the crime file for the Wanda Beach murder, it said on Christopher Wilder's file, and this is the last thing it said on him because they never questioned him further after this point. It says, at this stage, matter cannot be carried further because he had left the country. And I also think that they had the 2 other suspects and they really didn't want to let the idea that it was one of those suspects go. So it was sort of like, well, okay, well, let's just focus on the other ones, kind of.
Oh my God.
Maybe. What were the extradition laws between Australia and the US at the time?
I don't know what they were, but what I do know is that there was no communication until he started his spree killing. There was no communication between the US and Australia. Neither country knew about the crimes committed in the other
This
country.
creep could have been stopped.
Oh, at so many steps. What if the rape had been taken seriously when he raped that 13-year-old girl and he had actually been put into prison or
Correctional facility? Yeah.
like what if his parents hadn't bailed him out? Like just so many things. Ugh.
Jeez.
So shortly after he was questioned by the police for the rape and blackmail of the nurse, he got his stuff together. He relocated to Florida. He moved in with his dad's mom, so his paternal grandmother, and he started working on building jobs because he was carpenter and could do like contract work and also mechanics. He could do kind of all that stuff with his hands. So he worked his way up and he eventually
Is
moved
it
out.
fraternal or paternal?
Paternal. What did I say?
Oh,
P with a P.
I knew you meant paternal. I heard fraternal. So I was just
Fraternal.
checking.
No, it's
Checking, and then my follow-up question was going to be, what is a fraternal grandmother?
What fraternity does he belong to?
I don't
Whether
know.
it's the grandmother.
I don't know.
Is it
Emily,
like your
look it up.
brother's grandmother?
A fraternal grandmother is any grandma.
Any grandmother.
Yes. It's the world's grandmas.
You know, a frat, as long as she's a bro. It's basically just a grandma that's a bro.
She has a backwards cap on and crosses her arms a lot.
Yeah, she does.
Okay, so he moved in with his dad's mama. Pa, as in Peter Turnell. The Peter Turnell grandmother.
I hate that.
Sorry, I'm trying to make it clear.
Did you say Peter Turnell? I hate that too.
Haley hated it too. Sorry. I should have said P as in, wait, what did they use on the alphabet things for P?
Penis.
Okay, let's get back to the story.
Okay.
So he worked up, he moved his way out, he got into a pretty nice apartment, but he was arrested. So that was around 1969 that he moved to Florida. So it only took about 2 years. In 1971, March of 1971, Wilder was arrested in Pompano Beach in Florida for targeting another girl with his modeling scheme. He tried to get her to pose nude, and she reported him, and he was charged. So he pled guilty to disorderly conduct, and he was fined $15.
Oh my
Plus
gosh.
court fees of $10. So in today's money, that would be $90 and $60. So a total of $150. That was it.
That's so infuriating. Like, just he's like, you know what? I'm just gonna lean in to my to being a criminal, and if I just like act sorrowful, they'll just give me a fine.
Yeah, well,
I
it
hate
worked.
it.
It worked for him time and time again.
I hate it.
So he continued to move up the economic scale. He got a nicer, newer apartment. He actually got a girlfriend, and her name was Nola, and they lived together for 8 years. And Nola was really into dogs, like think Best in Show. And so they had dogs together, and they went to dog shows together. And Wilder just seemed really normal to Nola, other than he did not drink. That was not normal to her. He treated her very well. She said that he was really brand conscious. Appearances meant a lot to him. He would also like wear fake diamonds and like fake gold to try to look more expensive, make it look like he had more money than he actually did. Although he did end up building a decent fortune. It's not what people report. Like in the news, you'll report that he died with 7 million left, and it just was simply not the case. He was in a lot
It
of
was
debt.
all surface level.
A lot of it surface level. And also it's like, even though his house was a nice house on the water, it was one of the smallest houses in the neighborhood, like things like that. So he started to go bald, and he was like, getting closer to his 30s, and he, that like surfer boy look wasn't working for him anymore. So he tried a toupee, and eventually he didn't like wearing the toupee. And so he sort of had like a patch of hair up front, and then was kind of bald on top, and then had hair in the back, and then he would grow a beard to kind of compensate. And it was like, it was okay. Like the truth is, like when I look at pictures, I'm like, well, he's okay looking. I don't find him attractive, but it was silly. I know it sounds silly when I'm describing it, but he looked not super handsome, but he wasn't trying to come across to these women he was victimizing as handsome. He was trying to come across as professional and trustworthy.
Yeah.
So they'd trust him. And sometimes when you're just sort of a normal looking dude who's a little, like maybe has awkward hair, that's almost like, oh, he's an adorable little old man. Because the
I don't want to hurt his feelings.
Yeah, or well, obviously he's not after me because I'm way out of his league and way too young for him. So he must be a real photographer. Things like that. So Nola felt like they had a good relationship and that he treated her very well. But like in the same breath, she also said that he wanted her to dress very feminine. He was very particular about the house being extremely clean. It was likely he had OCD, and the good kind. I mean, the kind that makes you want to clean, not the good kind, like, because he was a murderer. So he liked an orderly house. He was really picky about cars. In fact, so he and Nola, they had an interesting relationship because she eventually found out he was stepping out with other women, but they kind of just came to an understanding about it. It's like she just sort of accepted it. She didn't like it, but it sort of led to their eventual breakup. But he would say that he would not ride in the cars of a lot of these women because they weren't clean enough. He would not ride in a car if it wasn't clean. He hated the heat. And so he would like hire people to do any outside work at his house. But yet he lived in Florida and he spent a ton of time on the beach, and never with Nola. He never invited Nola to the beach. He never offered to take photos of Nola. He didn't take any
Whoa.
photos of himself, and he didn't get any photos of them together. Like, she just said that that was something she noted later, that he was a photographer, or he claimed to be a photographer, but she was never involved in any of that.
I wonder if it's like he like quote unquote learned a lesson with his first wife, Jen, where it was like, don't bring this behavior
Oh, but he
home.
does. I mean, you'll see.
Oh, okay.
She finds photos too.
Oh, okay.
But
No, but I mean, like with the aggression towards his partner,
Yeah,
like he
maybe.
had with Jen.
yeah, that's actually a really good point. It could
Yeah.
be that he was like this with this, but he never married Nola. It's like he never married Nola, and he left his estate to her. Like, even though they broke up, like they're about to break up in my story, at the end of everything, he actually ends up leaving his estate to her, and they stayed
Oh.
friends. Like, they broke up and they stayed friends, and she just said that she never really noticed anything amiss until the FBI contacted her when he was on the lam and asked to tap her phone, which she let them do. She didn't
Wow.
have any inclination that he was the guy responsible.
Monster.
So she said their sex life was normal. He didn't ask for anything weird or strange, she said it was normal and healthy. But he did spend long hours at the office, and eventually Nola found caches of photos of young women on Florida beaches,
Oof.
scantily clad and in various states of dress. And she found out he was having multiple affairs, including like with the women that worked at his office.
So the beach was his hunting ground. So
Absolutely.
he definitely would not invite
Nola
Nola.
to the beach. Nope, that was his alone. He didn't go with, went alone. So she ended the relationship, but it ended up being an amicable separation, and they stayed in contact.
Mhm.
So in 1976 in Boca Raton, so this is 5 years after he was arrested and fined a whopping 15 plus $10, $25. In today's money, $150. In 1976, he approached a 16-year-old girl who was walking on the road. He recognized her because he had been doing work on her family's house, on a house they were building. And this was he was in his truck. So he didn't have his photographer gear with him. He didn't have his race car stuff. He was in a work truck, and he was dressed like a contractor. So he approached her and he was like, "Oh, hey, you recognize me, don't you? I'm doing work on your parents' house." And she did not recognize him, but she kind of was like, "Oh, yeah, I guess work's getting done at my parents' house." So then he was like, "Oh, hey, I'm just about to actually look at my truck." So he's like pulled his truck over and looked under the hood and just started chatting with her. And then he was like, "It would be great actually if you could let me in." I don't think it was the house that her parents lived in. I think it was a house they were building, but it was close by. And he was like, "It would be awesome. Do you have a key? Could you let me in to that house so I can finish up this thing?" And she was like, "Oh, yeah, sure." And he was driving the truck that had the logo of the construction company. And
Oh,
so
no.
he offered her a ride, and she got in. He had established trust by chatting with her, talking about her family, and also driving the truck. And then as they're driving, they were on their way to the house. He was like, "Oh, I forgot something. I need to swing by the construction office and pick something up." But instead, he drove her to a remote area, and she said she completely noticed a change in his demeanor.
Oh, no.
And then he exposed himself to her. She is 16 in the truck, and he started slapping her in the face and groping her breasts. He never grabbed below. He never touched her below, she said. And it did seem that Wilder had like a little bit of an obsession with breasts. Like, he was very much attracted and obsessed with that area of women's body. But she, to kind of like save herself, she was like, "Please don't rape me. This has happened to me before, and I think I'm pregnant," which actually wasn't true. She said this to try to get him away from her, and it worked. It worked because he didn't have sex with her, but he still forced her to
Completely
give
assaulted.
him
Felicia.
yes. He's basically like assaulted her, like while he was driving her back. He forced her to do that, and he continued to slap her. And then afterwards, he tried to convince her that he did not do it.
No.
He said, "I really thought you wanted to, if I'm being honest. I really thought you wanted to do that."
Gaslighting her.
Oh, just the same old thing. And then as he's driving her home, he was like, I'm really sorry if I forced you. It wasn't my intention. Do you want me to drop you off at the sheriff's office so you can make a report?" He said that to her.
Oh,
And she's completely shooken up. And she says, "No, I just want to go to my boyfriend's house. Just drop me off at my boyfriend's." So she went there. And then weird thing that he said to her, this was nuts, is after he like tried to tell her it wasn't rape and it didn't happen, and that, should I drop you off to the sheriff? He goes,
you know what? That was actually really stupid of me because the amount of money I spent on gas driving you around, I could have gone up north and bought a girl for like $10 more. Yeah, it's so sick. So then she eventually decides to tell her parents. But the other thing is, he was like, by the way, I know your schedule. I've been watching you and your mom. I know when you leave the house. I know when your mom leaves the house. I know when you guys are alone. So she was scared because this is like a threat to her. So he dropped her off with the boyfriends. She had eventually told her parents, and then the father called the contractor first and then called the sheriff. And so this was the way they did detective work back in these days, back in good old 1976. The sheriff and the father decide it's a good idea for them all to drive down to the office where Christopher works and wait for him to show up so she can identify him. So he walks in and she identifies him and she says to her dad, Dad, that's him. Please don't let him see me. And so the sheriff is there. So the father goes and confronts Wilder, and Wilder admits to it, but also does the same thing. Like, well, I thought she did want it. And I think I was just confused. I thought she was into it. And I really didn't mean for it to be against her will. And for my credit, I did offer to drive her to the sheriff's office. So when the police question him, he says he's sorry. He was ordered to take a psych evaluation. And so he had two different psych evaluations. He had two. One by this guy named Dr. Adelson. And Dr. Adelson was like, well, he's clearly remorseful. And he offered to take her to the sheriff's office. So obviously he's like a good guy that felt bad and realized that she was scared, but probably didn't realize beforehand. And he has anxiety.
My God. More sympathy for him than for the victim.
Yeah, that's kind of how it is. It's still no connection to his Australian crimes. However, he got a different psych exam 4 days earlier. And I don't know why he got the two, but it was like only one was used in court. But the other one was by Dr. Boozer, and it was a little bit more thorough. And Dr. Boozer said, after a very long and thorough conversation where Christopher, kind of talked about a lot of his inner thoughts, he said, he is not safe except in a structured environment and should be in a resident program geared towards needs. He shouldn't be out in public.
Oh my God.
But they somehow ignored that evaluation.
If only someone had listened. I just think that his attorney used the one where they're like, oh, he's just got anxiety. It's got upset tummy. It's got a little hurt tummy. So
and the prosecution didn't think to look at the other one. I don't. This is all infuriating.
It's so fascinating how that. I mean, yeah. I wonder. You have to wonder how it got buried.
It's this. What's crazy to me is that it's like his story is instance after instance after instance where he could have been stopped, and I just wonder, when everything came to culmination, if any of these judges or any of these parole officers or psychologists are just like, what the hell have I done?
Yeah.
If I want to be clear, Christopher Wilder is the one that killed these people. He's responsible, but you would have to wonder at some point, someone could have stopped this monster. There were so many opportunities.
Yes. It's kind of like one of those things, at least from my perspective, where it's just like the justice system does not work for victims. It works most of the time. I know that there are great instances of the justice system totally working and coming together. And then you also read these kinds of stories where it's just like, what are we doing?
Well, and I think we have to read these stories because this is what makes it better. These are the kind of things we have to read, we have to be aware of so that we so as a society and the justice system me as a cop enthusiast.
Yeah.
Not as a cop.
Yeah.
But someone who likes to read about investigations. Yeah. Now I know how people can do it better.
Or like Haley is a self-proclaimed justice slut. She's a slut for justice, okay?
Won't deny it. It's my Halloween costume every year, and I don't even have to dress up. So, what do you think? Was he found guilty or not guilty?
Not guilty.
He was found not guilty.
Ugh.
So it did go to trial, and he was found not guilty.
Yeah, I don't think in front of his lawyer tried to keep it out of
court.
So it was just in house, and the judge.
Ugh, whatever, man.
Because you put this in front of a group of people that aren't just a bunch of men going, oh well, he's a poor guy.
I get confused about who wants to give me a blowjob all the time.
So next phase, he moved into his new house on the water. So he's moving up in life because he wasn't punished. He started using his Australian accent, and he really played up his playboy lifestyle. So he had his business now going with Kimbrell, whose first name I just cannot remember, but he has this construction business and they're really making a lot of money. However, Kimbrell would complain later that really Christopher did not do much. Kimbrell did almost everything. He
Right.
said Christopher was not a very skilled carpenter, was not a very skilled construction worker, and spent a lot of the company's money and was most likely siphoning funds. And he said that like so much money was being siphoned until Kimbrell's wife started doing the books.
He seems to shape up when he's getting caught.
So Christopher started seeing a sex therapist, and he spun a fictional story about his past to the sex therapist, as we would learn. He
Do you
said,
think that was part of his?
Oh,
No, wait, he was found
absolutely.
not guilty. Sorry, never
no,
mind.
well, but is he planning for future crimes?
Yeah.
Yes. So he spun a story that would just be like your storybook birth of a serial killer. He almost died as an infant and was even given last rites. Well, guess what? He's not Catholic. So no, he's Baptist. He wasn't given last rites. No one in his family said that happened. He
Oh my
also
gosh.
said he almost drowned at 3 years old, a near-death experience. No, also no record of that happening. These are things though that are commonly reported as to have happened, but in my research, there
Your
were
thorough
proven,
research.
very, honestly, very thorough, very proven to be false. I mean, very thorough,
Yeah.
because the guy that wrote the book did very thorough
Yeah.
research.
Yeah.
He also said that after the rape of the 13-year-old girl, when he was 17, that his mom's friend recommended that he go to a treatment center where he received electroshock therapy. No record of this ever happening, but he said it happened, and he actually did have an obsession with electrocution, as you will learn about more later.
Oh no.
It's really awful, very awful. He basically made up a bunch of stories. He made his father out to be more abusive and more tyrannical than any of the other brothers have said he was. They actually said their father, even though he was militaristic, was pretty gentle.
Mhm.
I know sometimes the oldest son does get the brunt of like the harsh parenting that happens, or the oldest child gets it. So maybe that he probably did get it a little harder than his brothers, but all of his brothers said that the parents were, and neighbors and everyone who witnesses, that the parents were mostly pretty gentle. If
Yeah.
anything, maybe a little too easy on their kids.
Well, and the father stuck up for him
Yeah,
with that.
multiple
Yeah.
times.
Yeah.
He loved hiring escorts, and he did not hide it. He flaunted it. Sometimes he would hire 2 at a time and like to go out in the town with a girl on each arm, and he would like be slapping their butts, and they were like paid to be like, oh, Christopher, just kind of fawn all over him. Also, he was fine-tuning his photography scam, and this one just makes me so mad. So there were 2 girls that were at the Palm Beach in Florida. We're in Florida, the Palm Beach Mall, and they were visiting one of the girls' grandmothers. They, I think, were 15 or 16.
Gosh.
And they were at the Palm Beach Mall, and they were approached by 2 women who were young women and who appeared to be twins. And the woman comes up to them and says, are you guys interested in being models? Have you heard of Barbizon? So first, this is a tactic he started to use. He had other women approach his target. He either paid them or coerced them. He also used a well-known established company, Barbizon. That's the company I almost modeled for. I'm sorry, I tried to say it without laughing. I did not.
I just was like, Nettie, I did not know this about you.
So anyway, they approached him, and then they said, if you're interested, come and meet our boss. So the twins walked the girls towards this man, and he introduced himself as David Pierce. So now he's using an alias, because it was not a David Pierce. It was Christopher Wilder. Hold on.
The pervert.
The worst. He had no Australian accent in this instance, although he often turned it on. He asked them first if they wanted to be models, and they said yes. And then he said, well, okay, I need you to take off your bras. And if they seemed a little hesitant, he's like, look, if you want to be models, you can't be shy. This is the life of a model. Like, I'm just the not the manager, but like your agent. And I'm just telling you how it is.
Oh, geez.
And it totally worked. He was like, you have to think about this. My eyes are a camera. So if I'm looking at you, I'm looking at what the photo is going to be. It's not me looking at you. My eyes are a camera. So the girls went into the bathroom, they took off their bras and came back out, and he had them just walk back and forth as a test in front of him. And this was a creepy thing he'd do, just like loving to tell girls to walk and to suggest things about the way they walk. he would always like say, put a little more sway into your hips,
Ugh.
and he would always say, you'll have to lose weight. You'll have to lose some weight, but I think you have what it takes. Like, so he'd attack something about their looks. Like, you're a little
Negging.
short, but you might be able to do this. That was part of his manipulation. So the twins that brought the girls in walked back by and they said, good luck, we're going home. And they didn't look suspicious. They didn't look alarmed or concerned. And so later the police, they never found these girls, even they were twins. They think they were either hired escorts or were just other girls that he coerced.
He was like, hey, here's $50.
Yeah,
Go.
$50 to recruit. I mean, which he did.
Here's
often gave-
these t-shirts, here's $50. Go find some cute girls and I'm a model scout.
He had a fake Barbizon logo, and they found out later, the police found out that he had been into Barbizon multiple times trying to get a job, and they always turned him down. So he just made his own fake logo. He made fake t-shirts that he would give to girls to go recruit other girls. And there was a photo shoot happening in the mall at this time. So while he's talking to these girls, he points to the photo shoot and he says, do you see that? I arranged that. I'm the one that organized that photo shoot, but we can't bother them. They're in the middle of, working. So, but they were just starstruck and so much awe as they watched this professional model draping herself across. It was like for a truck or a car or something, draping herself across the Ford.
Yeah.
And so,
well, I mean, like, I remember being like those ages where you're like 13 to like 16 and it's just like you're in Boise and it's like, oh gosh, what if somebody notices that I'm pretty? And yeah, I know from LeGrand,
you get recruited in Boise, Idaho.
But like it's a big city compared to where we live, and it's just like oh, maybe somebody's gonna notice that I'm pretty, and just
That's so funny because you want to know what my inner fantasy was? I would like if I knocked something over, I'd put it carefully back on the hanger and hang it back up, and I always thought, I bet the manager's gonna notice how good I was at that and come offer me a job at this store.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Are you a professional clothes hanger upper?
Not yet.
No, I'm just a girl.
Whenever that happens to me, I just hope they think I'm the best customer they've ever had.
So he started to coach them. He would ask them a question, what are you? And they would have to answer, I'm a Barbizon model. And he would say it over and over and over again. And he'd be like, okay, I want you to walk and do this. And what are you? I'm a Barbizon model. So they would say it over and over and over again. And he just said it was part of the training. So they really identified as a Barbizon model. And I mean, they were eating it up. They thought it was the best thing ever.
Yeah.
So he told them that he had some clothes in his car. So he asked them to wait for him. And he went out and he brought back some like 6-inch high heels and asked one girl to put those on, and then white shorts. And this was something I noticed when I was writing this up. He has a thing about white shorts. And remember what one of the girls was wearing in Wanda Beach?
Oh my gosh. White shorts.
Yeah. And he had a thing repeatedly where he got girls to change into white shorts. Repeatedly.
Oh my God.
It was my own detective work.
Yeah, creepy.
So he went and he got the white shorts and the heels, and he told the girls to go change into these. And then he said, I think, I know this is a little soon because you're brand new, but I actually think that you guys are perfect for this pizza restaurant commercial. So what I need you to do is we're going to go buy some pizza from the food court, and I'm going to take some photos of you guys like with the pizza. So he's like, so let's go buy 3 pieces of pizza and some drinks. And then we're going to just go get in my car. Just no big deal. Go get in my car. Or maybe he said their car. Go get in my car and we're just going to drive around. So he's like, I just want to get photos of you driving and eating pizza. So I think he actually put them in their car and he had them eat the pizza, like take photos, chew slowly, eat this while you drive. And so that's how he got them comfortable with him being in the car with them. Then he told the brown-haired girl, so there was a brown-haired girl and a blonde girl. The brown-haired girl was the one whose grandmother lived there. He said, okay, I need you to go and call your grandmother because I can't go any further with this until we get her permission.
Oh my
gosh. He called her grandmother. He spoke to her grandmother and confirmed. He's like, oh yeah, I'm an agent with Barbizon Models and we're just doing a quick photo shoot. Yeah, we're just going to be at the mall. We won't leave the mall. It won't take that long, but they're going to make some money. And the grandma agreed to it. It's really unfortunate. But that just they just trusted him now. They're he involved the grandmother. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And a thing, just a small thing that I read, it was like a trust exercise. like getting these girls like bit by bit to do these like trust exercises to trust that he is who he says he is.
Yes. Oh, like thing after thing. I mean, the fake logo, the business cards, using other women, the camera around his neck. He always had a camera around his neck. But I mean, presenting a business card like to a 15-year-old girl, oh my gosh, that's like ID, you know? You have
So
no
he
idea.
did have a business card at this stage. That was what I was going to ask because there was a commenter in that article that you sent me where she thought maybe he hadn't had business cards up until he encountered her in 1984. That's why I asked about the timeline, but he did already
Oh,
have business cards at this time in the 70s.
I think he was already using, this is 76 and
Okay.
or 77 perhaps, but I think he was already using business cards. Although some of them, like he wouldn't give them, he would show them, but not let the girls examine it.
Oh.
So he left the dark-haired girl after they called the grandmother. He left the dark-haired girl in the car and he's like, okay, me and Blondie here are going to go throw away our pizza remains. And then we'll, talk about next steps. So he walked away with the blonde girl and then he started to ask her intimate questions while they were walking about her sex life. And he's like this, and this is what he said to her. He actually said, this is a trust exercise. You have to trust me. So he was asking her these intimate questions, but then he would always, like every 3 or 4 questions, say, and what are you? I'm a Barbizon model.
Oh,
so she just thought this was like the next
gosh.
step, all part of it, learning to be open. And he also told her that she couldn't lie and that she might have to take a lie detector test. But what are you?
I'm a
I'm a
Barbizon model.
It's really sad. I mean, it's really sad. And think about it, like he's doing this thing that when the girls find
like
out it's
brainwashing.
fake, it's so embarrassing. So there's so like he's making them do these things that are so making them so much less likely to tell.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
I would be mortified that I believed that I was a Barbizon model. So she told him she was not feeling very well. She's like, I just feel kind of strange. And he said, are you on drugs? If you are, you need to tell me. And she was like, no, I'm not on drugs. And then they were walking back towards the car where her friend was waiting. And he said, you need to keep smiling. We don't want your friend to worry. And then he was like, actually, we're gonna walk this way. And then he walked her back to his car, which was parked in a different part of the mall parking lot. She was like, well, what are we doing? And he's like, oh, don't worry, just get in. We're going to drive around the parking lot and we're going to go back to where your friend is. I just wanted to have my car there because, it's where he keeps all his equipment. And so he got her in the car. He then told her he had drugged her and that in about 15 minutes, she would lose consciousness. And so the pizza she had eaten, so she actually never lost consciousness, but she just was very woozy and felt like completely out of control. And he sexually assaulted her. He forced her to straddle him.
Ugh.
And then drove her back to her friend's car. By that point, the friend had called mall security. She realized something was wrong. And he just let her out of the car and drove off. The girl was taken to the hospital and a rape kit was done. And they were able to get a semen sample. And her blood, though, showed no signs of drugs. However, they went and they collected the pizza remains from the bin that they threw it in. And there were traces of LSD on the pizza. And so they think it just processed through her system. And there was so much evidence. Like, this is the thing, is that like they had the girls, they had witnesses at the mall that saw him talking with the girls, so much evidence. He was convicted this time. But this is what happened was he got arrested by the police and he immediately again confessed. And he said, I'm just so sorry. I'm so sorry that I tricked them, that I told them I was a model scout. He would not talk about the sexual assault though. And he never apologized for it. He just apologized for tricking the girls.
Gosh.
And making them feel like getting their hopes up and making them feel bad. When there was so much evidence and he actually pled guilty instead of to rape to sexual battery, so a lessened charge. And he was sentenced to 5 years probation and therapy.
Ugh.
My
Mandated
gosh.
therapy. And he was already seeing a therapist. And I'm not really sure at this point if he had to see a different therapist or if he was allowed to just keep seeing his same therapist. But it was said that he absolutely manipulated that therapist into thinking he was getting better and working on his issues and like, addressing, confronting his demons and getting better. And then he said, he told his therapist it would be really helpful if he could go see his parents.
What?
And go back to Australia. And the therapist agreed and recommended to the judge that he be granted his visa to go back to Australia. And the judge agreed.
Oh
So
my gosh.
Oh,
He was
geez.
told, though, that he had to go, like see his parents. So what do you think? Do you think that Christopher Wilder went to see his parents on his return to Australia?
Absolutely not.
He certainly did not. He went back to his old hunting grounds. So he arrived in Australia on December 6th, 1982. He landed in Sydney and went immediately to Manly Beach. And Manly Beach was his old hunting grounds where he had been
The 13-year-old girl.
yeah,
Ugh.
well,
No, that was Wanda Beach. Wanda Beach was the rape of the 13-year-old girl. Manly Beach is where he lived when he was married, and he did the photography scam and blackmailed that nurse and probably a bunch of other women.
Oh, that poor nurse.
that poor nurse. That was Manly Beach, the nurse.
Okay.
So he approaches a beautiful 16-year-old girl named Fiona Parsons. And Fiona Parsons ends up being like a really kick-ass witness against Christopher Wilder. He approached her with the modeling scam. And she like was into it. She was like, oh my gosh, of course I'm meant to be a model. And he took her shopping. He let her choose a bikini, had her buy some pantyhose, and did all of this, like this kind of like carrot and stick approach. Like, well, here, I'm going to buy you this. Oh, but you've got to do this. Like, I'm going to buy you this bikini, but you've got to put it on and let me take photos of you. Oh, here's these new really nice pantyhose, but I want you to put them on with no underwear and let me take photos of you. And so it was kind of like this, here's a carrot and on a stick, though, I'm going to move it a little further away. And he took her to a secluded spot and he had her take increasingly sexual positions. Like as he photographed her, got her to do more and more until she ended up crying in the dressing room. And then he took her back to the beach and she was going to go home. And he was like, wait, can you just do me one more favor? You were a great model, but could you help me approach another girl? I have this other girl that I'd like to photograph and I just think it would come better. Somehow Fiona agreed to it and she went and she approached this girl. And then Fiona sort of like waited. The girl agreed and went off and did photographs with Wilder. And then Fiona saw the girl later sobbing and goes up to her and was like, what happened? What's going on? And the girl just said that Wilder had forced her to take nude photos. That's all. She said, nothing else happened, but I wonder
Oh,
if something else happened. And the girl just wouldn't admit. So Fiona is like kind of angry at this point. So she looks around the beach for Christopher Wilder and she can't find him anywhere. He was gone. And Fiona's kind of crushed because she realizes that she's been lied to, but that just makes her angry. Instead of embarrassed, she's just like, yeah, this guy's not getting away with it. This is like ridiculous what he did to me and what he did to this other girl.
Yeah.
And so then about 3 weeks later, so Fiona so far has just kind of kept this information to herself because nothing really technically happened. Like she wasn't assaulted. She just was coerced into sexual photos and nude photos. And so was the other girl. Yeah. So about 3 weeks later, on December 28th, 1982, Wilder went to a different beach. I don't know which one. And there was a group of teens and he had been kind of watching them and the teens noticed that he was watching them, the girls especially. It was 3 boys and 2 girls. And the boys went off to get some food and they didn't come back for a while. So the girls decided to go and try to find the boys. And so as they leave their spot, Christopher Wilder, who they had seen watching them, approaches them and he was like, look, I'm a modeling agent. I'm staying in that hotel. And he gestures to like a super fancy, expensive hotel. He's like, I'm staying there and just kind of scouting and you guys would be perfect for a modeling agency. And I don't remember what agency he used. He probably used Barbizon or something. He tells the girls that he'd like to do some photos of them right there on the beach. And they had been in bikinis and had just wrapped sarongs around them. So he's like, listen, let's just do a test. Just go over there and take off your sarongs and lay them down and just pose laying in the grass. So the girls start doing what he asks. And then meanwhile, the boys that they're with come walking up. And the boys are like, what are you doing? And they're like, oh my gosh, leave us alone. We're just being scouted to be models. Okay. And so let us do this thing. And the guys are like, this isn't a good idea. And so Christopher Wilder sees that the boys are interfering. So he calls the girls over and he's like, look, I'm just going to run into this hotel, this fancy hotel, that I'm staying at and grab something. If those boys give you any trouble, you give them trouble back because you and we are going to go drive over here and take some really awesome photos and get your portfolio going. So don't let those boys stop you. So he walked into the hotel where he was not staying. He just did it as like for clout because it was expensive and nice. Walks into the hotel, comes back out, gets the girls to get in the car. The boys are so alarmed. They're like, do not go with this guy. And they're like, we're going to do what we want. Or I don't know what they said.
Right.
The boys
Followed them, hailed a taxi, scrounged up their teenage money.
Oh my gosh.
Hailed a
These boys are
taxi
heroes.
and followed them. But they lost him.
No.
They lost him. So they were like, what do we do? This is so bad. We know they're in danger. They wouldn't listen to us. They then see a cop drive by. So they flag the cop down and they tell the cop what happened. However, the cops cannot track him down. They don't know which way he went. The boys lost him. The girls return hours later and they had been through hell. And at first they denied it because of their pride. They were super embarrassed when the boys were like, what happened? What happened? They're like, nothing happened. He just took photos of us, but they had both been attacked. So what they eventually said, they eventually told the police and told their parents was that he took them away in the car. He, confirms with the girls, do you really want to be models? This is coercion where they're like, yes, I'm going to put my all into it. And then they drive to a remote spot, a secluded spot, and his demeanor changed instantly. Like there wasn't even like a preamble of a few fun pictures. His demeanor changed and they got scared. They're 15. So he made them strip down and pose naked in sexual positions. And they just did exactly what he asked because they were so scared. Then he took them back to a hotel. And this was the weird way he entered. He blindfolded both of them, first of all. So they didn't know where they were driving. So later when it came time to identify the hotel, they had to like remember their like kind of senses. So they said, first of all, they could tell they were driving like up a parking structure. And then he took them into the hotel one at a time, like threatened them. So he took one girl in and told the other girl, you wait in the car. If you don't, I'll hurt your friend. Blindfolded her, took her into the elevator. Another man gets into the elevator with them. And Christopher Wilder just says to the girl, are your eyes feeling okay from the surgery? And she didn't know what to do. So she just said yes. So that man, if he had questions about why this girl was blindfolded, it's like Christopher Wilder was that quick on his feet. And she just was scared and just said yes. She just acquiesced. Like he had displayed himself. And so later, like people have questions about one of his other victims. And later everyone's like, why didn't she escape? Why did she just do what he said? And it's like he had that ability to just quickly convince you he was in control.
He made them feel, like enough fear for their friend or fear for themselves.
Just powerless. Just completely powerless.
And he also would get all of this personal information of like, well, I know where you live, so I'll hurt your parents or something like that.
Yeah, he would get their personal information. So then he went down and brought the other girl up in the same way. However, she said that they didn't run into anybody in the elevator. As far as she knew, they didn't run into anybody. So he had them in the room and he assaulted them and took pictures of them all night long. It was really awful. They just had a really terrible night. And then the next morning, he dropped them back off at the train station. And he also got their numbers from them and said he'd be calling about the model contract. Like this is what he'd do. He'd try to make it seem normal.
Just continues it on like this is just part of the process.
Yeah, I'll be calling you about the model contract, which is so funny because it's not even real. Like he's not a model agent. He's not even a real photographer. He is a pretend photographer. I mean, I guess you can say you're a photographer if you take pictures, but he wasn't like hired by anyone or credentialed or anything.
Yeah.
So the boys had, called the police and the police had called the parents of the girls. And so initially the girls denied that anything had happened because of their embarrassment, but eventually they told their parents what happened. And the parents helped the girls press charges. They found mounds of evidence. He admitted to the assault. He admitted to photographing the girls. They found and developed film in the hotel room or in his other hotel room with loads of photos of girls, but he pled not guilty. And what do you think happened? Do you think he was held accountable?
Oh my gosh, I'm going to scream.
Well, what happened was he was not held accountable. I actually don't know what he pled not guilty. I'm not sure what the charges ended up being, but the judge allowed him to return to the US. Oh, I know what happened. The judge, they put a stay on his trial. So they set the trial for the later date. And he told the judge he had important business deals in the US and needed to get back. Reminded the judge that he had dual citizenship between Australia and the United States. He told the judge that he had business. The judge let him go back to the United States as long as he promised to return for his court date in August of 1983.
Promise. Yeah, just pinky swear. We need a scream pillow.
He was held on a $400,000 bond, which his father paid. And I think his father had to come up with $200,000 or something.
Oh,
so he was given a pretty high bail, but basically they just postponed his trial, let him go back to the US with the promise that he'd return. So he heads back to Florida and now it is 83. He gets back in the USA And Wilder tells his business companion, Kimbrell, about the charges, but explained that he thought the girls were 18 and that they had consented. So basically, he's like, I'm just being thrown under the bus. I'm being framed, man. And he just kind of got back into his life. He got really focused on his race car driving because he, loved
a
that
dork.
high speed. And he had a woman named Dana Neighbors, and Dana was his monogramming person. Dana would do all the monogramming for his racing team.
Mhm.
And he would go and like hang out at Dana's house. And Dana's husband was a police detective named Tom Neighbors. And Tom would come home and Chris would be there chatting with his wife. And Tom never got any alarm bells. He said he prided himself. He was like a criminal investigator and he never got any alarm bells from Christopher Wilder, ever, ever. And meanwhile, Tom, around this time, was investigating the assault and beating of two young girls, sisters, ages 9 and 12, who were kidnapped by gunpoint, taken in a car to a remote area, assaulted, punched and slapped, which was one of Christopher Wilder's MOs. He loved punching and slapping like in the face, and then brought them home.
Oh my God.
And the girls had a description of the man, but the man had a full head of hair. And also like they were looking at people who assaulted children because these were like children, not people who had been accused of assaulting like older people. So he had no idea that the perp who had actually done this assault that he was investigating was there hanging out in his kitchen with him and his wife.
So we know that Christopher Wilder was responsible for that?
Oh
Yes.
my gosh.
We do know now, but he didn't know at the time. Okay, so the girls, they did find out for sure later. The girls did after, everything happened that you'll hear about soon. The girls were shown a lineup. They immediately identified Christopher Wilder, but they said he had a full head of hair. So he had been wearing a toupee. They identified him immediately. And then they found like some fibers that connected him or the DNA. Oh, they collected his semen or something. Something happened. Like you didn't match semen with DNA. It was like you matched it with type or something and it matched. And so it was confirmed it was definitely Christopher Wilder that assaulted these girls. But what's crazy is that when the author of this book was writing the book in 2017 and he contacted these girls, they said that their mother just told them 2 years before, like in 2015, that she knew Christopher Wilder. She had never told her daughters because she didn't think it was him, but she knew him and had like hung out with him. And they think that that's how he knew those girls because he would continually like approach people that he was familiar with.
Was it like a opportunity grabbed him off the street
by
or-
gunpoint? He saw
By
them
gunpoint,
walking.
I forgot that.
He put them in his car by gunpoint. And the older girl, the 12-year-old, said that like he beat both of them, but he only sexually assaulted the older girl, which the older sister was saying that was her hope. Like when it was happening, she was like, I just hope he leaves my little sister alone. And so
Oh, that just breaks your heart.
it's so sad. 12, yeah. And 9. And in the report, it was like just shy of 10. I'm like, no, that's 9. We call that 9 years old.
Yeah.
Okay, so Tom started to date around and he dated another race car driver named Vicky Smith. And she just said he was super gentleman, super old fashioned, but there were a couple weird things. One time she out of the blue.
Who's Tom?
Did I say Tom?
Tom Neighbors is the detective investigating the assault of the 9 and 12.
I like to say wrong names. I like to throw people off, keep them on their toes. No, you were listening. So he's Christopher Wilder. Started dating this woman named Vicky Smith, who was a race car driver. And she said that he seemed pretty normal except for 2 events. One time she saw him at the mall and she only knew him as a race car driver and as like a property developer. And he had a camera around his neck and he acted really weird about running into her. He was in predator mode. He was hunting and she was suddenly there.
A witness.
Then he took her to a fashion show and he knew the name of every model. He knew their names. And she just thought that was very strange for like someone who's not in the fashion business. And she didn't know him as a photographer. And they had a standing dancing date once a week. And she said it was really fun. He was very gentleman until he started turning his interest onto another young woman he met at the Miss Florida pageant. He actually met her in 1982, but he started spending more and more time with her. Her name was Elizabeth Kenyon, and she was runner-up Miss Florida pageant. She was a special ed teacher at like Coral Canyon High School, and she also was the cheerleading coach for the high school. Lovely girl. She was so beautiful and just so sweet. Like everyone that talked about her just said she was just like sunshine in a bottle, just lovely, dark hair, beautiful, very young looking, which he always seemed to try to approach like the models that were very young looking for their age.
Yeah.
And she was, I think, 21 or 22. I have her age. What page am I on? I'll find her age. She was 23 in 1984. So she was 21 when they started dating.
Oh, she's gorgeous.
Oh, yeah.
Did you find her photo, Em?
No.
Beautiful.
Oh, she is gorgeous.
Very and lovely. Like just seemed like she was a special ed teacher. You don't become a special ed teacher. You don't just have like a
good heart.
Yeah. So he was posing as a photographer at the Miss Florida pageant. And later, like when investigators would talk to other contestants, they said that Christopher Wilder had a creepy reputation because he would constantly ask models if they would pose topless.
Ew.
And so most of the girls were very wary of him. However, with Elizabeth, he actually got her paying gigs. And it's unsure if he just like faked these paying gigs and gave her money, but he was very much interested in her. And he persuaded her to have dinner with him. He's significantly older than her. She's 21 and he's like 40 or 30, like in his late 30s.
Jeez.
Mhm.
She had a good time. She was impressed with what a gentleman he was. He didn't pressure her. He didn't try to kiss her. She said that she actually didn't think he was romantically interested in her.
And
She thought it was a professional interest.
Yeah, and when you're that young, like you don't have the context of how inappropriate that age gap can be, especially like
Well, and especially when she didn't think it was romantic. She just thought it was, I'm a model, he's a photographer. They were like coworkers. And so then he talked Beth into introducing him to her family. And so she was like, oh, okay. And her parents like lived in upstate New York. That was their main house, but they had a house in Pompano Beach, a little bit north of Miami, like not Miami. And so they had like a night where they went up there and he took the whole family like out to a French restaurant and paid for everything. It was like such a gentleman, really impressed her mother, was nice to her brother. They were all charmed by him, the family. He was never inappropriate with her, never tried to kiss her. There was never anything romantic. Then suddenly like on their third or fourth date, he proposed marriage and she was just so shocked. And she very politely declined and just said, there must have been a miscommunication. I am just not interested romantically. I'm interested in men closer to my own age. And I'm so sorry if, I misled you. I just think there was miscommunication. And he took it so well. She said, like, she told her mom later, oh, Mom, he really just took it so well. He didn't even bat an eye. Like, I just think it was a misunderstanding. What a good guy.
Oh, geez.
And so they kind of stayed in contact. So this was in 1982 when he proposed. And then 2 years later in 1984, he contacted her again to offer her a very lucrative modeling job for the end of February 1984. But she had to decline because she had a job in New York. Keep that in your head, okay? She declined the job. It was scheduled for the end of February 1984.
And she told him she was in New York.
She told him she had an engagement in New York.
Okay.
It's more the time of month, though, that matters. February, late February.
Okay.
So June 27th, 1983, 20-year-old Sherry Lynn Ball left Florida, telling her mom she was going to New York with a friend to pursue a modeling career. And her body was found near Beth Kenyon's family home in upstate New York.
Oh,
Wilder was spotted there around this time. Again, Tammy Leppert, 18, was last seen around 11:30 a.m. on July 6, 1983 in Cocoa Beach. Her mother, a modeling agent, claimed that Wilder and Tammy had met on the set of a movie. There were also claims that she had been approached by a man promising to further her career in modeling and the movies. The man's name was redacted from the police files. This drives me crazy. His name was redacted from the police files, and they cannot find the original file. They can only find the file with all of the names and important information redacted. The name is redacted and identifying features were redacted.
Oh my gosh. That is so frustrating.
And then another woman, Robin Melanie Adele, 22, she disappeared while she was headed to a Bennigan's Lounge in Tamarack, Florida. Her body was never found and her car was dumped. And all of these were like very similar looking women, very much Christopher Wilder's type. So they haven't been necessarily proven to be victims of Wilder, but they all disappeared around the time he was hunting and starting to turn up his murder game.
Like a significant similarity.
Yes. So if you remember, Wilder had to return to Sydney for an August hearing, but he had to be there by July 18th, 1983, and he had to stay with his parents. He complied. He actually flew back to Sydney. There's a possibility that on his way, he stopped in San Francisco on his way there and might be responsible for the murder of a girl in San Mateo. I didn't know the girl's name, but they think that's a possibility.
Oh my goodness.
So at the trial, several people came to testify. Fiona Parson, the girl that I had talked about earlier that he had approached was there to testify, and her presence was contested because she was not sexually assaulted by him. So the defense lawyer cross-examined her. Well, first of all, he said, wait, so if I walk with a girl, if I go on a walk with a girl, it's suddenly a crime? Like, why is she here? There was no crime committed against this girl. But she was allowed to testify because it attributed to his character and to his modus operandi, AKA MO. So the defense attorney was vicious with her, but she held her ground and was so composed. And everything I read, it said she was like a criminal defense attorney's nightmare because she just
would not be rattled.
Would not be rattled. Just so focused on it, gave concise answers. And anytime he tried to catch her in a lie or anything, like try to like insinuate that she was lying, she just would clear responses back. They also interviewed some of the detectives, and like how it worked back then was the detectives weren't allowed to have their statements or their information with them in their hands. They had to memorize everything. So if they stumbled while they were trying to remember, the defense attorney would try to like use that as like, oh, sounds like your memory's not so great.
Oh, geez.
The other thing is that this defense attorney would do is while girls were testifying, girls who had been victimized by him and brutalized by him, he would stop them and say, I want to remind you, you are under oath, because it makes the jury think that he knows they're lying, even if they're telling the truth, that he knows something they don't know. So if they're saying something, he's like, I'm going to stop you and remind you, you are under oath. He would do that repeatedly with each victim.
Oh my, that makes your blood boil.
The father of a victim who testified had his parenting questioned. Like, well, maybe this happened because you weren't a good enough parent. Like, you just let your daughter go to the beach by herself. When the mother was testifying, the defense attorney questioned the daughters. Like, every time she'd say something, he'd say, so your daughter lied. Questioned their memory. He accused them of lying. It was like pretty brutal and awful. So the case ends up getting put on hold. They do not finish it. So then he was allowed to leave. And he's asked to return again in April 3rd of 1984. Again.
Oh my gosh.
The Australian courts
these people
are not aware of two things. They're not aware of any of his crimes that have happened in the US. They also are not aware that he is wanted for questioning in the Wanda Beach murders because they just don't look at his file. They're not looking. Oh.
So I mean, part of this is just the way it works when somebody's under 18 and your file is sealed, right? Like for a reason.
But when he was wanted for questioning for the Wanda Beach murders, he would have been 17 when he committed the crime, but he would have been when his wife and mother-in-law went in to turn him in, right. He was like 23. So they also did not know, the judge at this time that let him go back to the US, that Wilder was really scared of jail, and it was looking highly likely because despite the defense's best efforts, these witnesses were good. They were good. And this so far was not in front of, like, everything so far had just been in front of the judge. What was going to happen in the next trial was going to be in front of a jury.
Next step.
And Christopher's defense attorney was like, this is not going to be good in front of a jury. Christopher was pretty certain he was going to end up eventually in jail. And he had told one of his therapists that he was very terrified of jail and would do anything to not go back. So he gets back to the US and he immediately books, like as a sign of good faith, his tickets to return to Australia for the April 3rd trial. So early August 1983, he's back in the US. And he told Kimbrell, his business partner, that again, everything's a misunderstanding. He's being accused of things. These girls consented. He thought they were older.
Kimbrell, this keeps happening.
And Kimbrell, again, I don't know why he's even business partners with Wilder because,
sounds like Wilder doesn't do him any favors.
Yeah, it's just, I just think I really don't understand the relationship. So, when he returns, he reconnects with the Kenyans. He calls Beth again and he connects with the family. But at this time, Beth just considers him a friend and like a professional contact because as far as she knows, he's a fashion photographer. Mm-hmm. He started therapy again. His therapist's last name was Bush. I don't remember her first name. It was a woman though, and she specialized in sexual therapy, like, helping people through sexual issues. But he said he was very depressed, and he also said he felt like he was a powder keg that he was about to blow. Like he said these things to his therapist. He kept working his model routine. He had promised his therapist that he wouldn't go work malls. So instead, he took the routine to the racetrack where he was very familiar with the surroundings, where he was a driver. He kind of like hung out with these women, not necessarily dated them, but there was a woman who was named Margaret Dawson who he hung out with. more as friends, but she said they were at his house and that they never were like physically romantic, but they were relaxing in his hot tub together. She's 32, so she's a little out of his age range. He likes them real young.
Ugh.
And he said to her, "You have to get out. I can't tell you why, but I don't want to hurt you." And she just said that she saw this look in his eye and just knew that she should leave. And so she left. And then like the next time they saw each other, it was like business as usual, no big deal. But then she woke up like a few weeks later and she sees Christopher Wilder standing at the foot of her bed. And she thought it was very strange, but he did have a key to her house.
Oh my gosh.
So she was like, "Chris, what are you doing here?" And he said, "I don't know. I don't know how I got here. I don't remember getting here." And then he sat down and talked to her and he told her about his like his urges to do this photography scam. And he said, "It's something I have to do. I have to go get these girls and take photos of them. I can't stop it. I have to do it."
I mean, this also sounds like it could be a manipulation sympathy tactic where he's just like,
for sure.
like-
I think it's real though. I do think that he was so compelled that he couldn't stop it. I also want to say, yes, he can.
yes,
Just don't
you
do it.
can. I just,
But, I think you're right, Haley, for sure. Like talking to her about it, it's
And he's
like
just
giving a
a liar.
sympathetic ear. Like,
And he was doing the same thing to his therapist.
yeah, you just can't believe a thing this idiot says. And
Yeah.
yes, he is an idiot. Like, sure, he got away with all of these things, but a good person, I just, no.
yeah. Have you heard of the term "shittiot" that Oliver made up? Because I think it's an even stronger form,
Yeah.
maybe even more accurate.
Yeah. I
He's
think
an
that
absolute shittiot.
we can label Christopher Wilder as a shittiot. So another friend who wanted to remain anonymous said that Christopher told her that he would have blackouts and he would lose 2 to 3 days of time. So, and I do wonder if this was another thing, like if I'm caught, I can say I don't remember anything because for 2 or 3 days I couldn't remember anything.
Mhm.
But it's also possible that he just completely disassociated. All right. There's this pretty sweet girl named Rosario Gonzalez. And she went by Cherry, but or
Aw.
Rosario. They called her both. She was gorgeous. She got this really great gig working as a model for the Grand Prix in Miami. It paid $400 a day, and she only had to work for like 3 days. And that's really good. That would be like $1,000 a day just for showing up.
Uh-huh.
And it was for a pharmaceutical company where they passed out a pain reliever with aspirin in it to the race car drivers. She lived with her parents. She was 20. She was engaged to a guy named Bill Londos, and they were so in love. And like she was so excited for her wedding that her family and friends said that she counted it down like to the hour. She spent the night before her job. She had stayed up till 2 a.m. talking with her fiance about wedding plans. So she showed up really tired at the Grand Prix, but in good spirits and looking totally gorgeous.
Oh, really beautiful.
Her last words to Bill before they hung up that night were, "I love you so much it hurts."
Ugh.
And then they ended their phone call and she got to work and, worked the morning away. And then around 1 o'clock, she called her parents at some point in the morning and told them she'd see them at dinner, that she'd be there at 6 or 7, told them that the day was going great. At 1 o'clock, she left, waved to her friends and said, "I'm going for lunch. I'll be back." She never came back. No one ever saw her again. The parents got really worried when she hadn't shown up by 9 p.m. and they had been in contact with her fiance, Bill, who was never a suspect. Like Bill was just good to the core. Just no one for a second thought it was Bill. She was last seen walking towards the car park or the parking lot. When she wasn't home by 9, the parents called the police. And this was a really good thing, is that the police took immediate action. And by the next morning had news reports going out and they were like in full search for her. So they had investigators at the Grand Prix the next day questioning people. They found someone who remembered seeing her with a man who had a camera around his neck and who was balding. Now, she was also seen having her photo taken by someone else with a different description, but that turned out to be a family friend, and they tracked him down and they know it wasn't him. And he actually had a photo of her that was the very last photo known to be taken of her, like waving to the camera, like sitting on some stone steps at the Grand Prix. There was another witness that said that they saw someone matching Rosario's description running from a car where 2 men chased her and tried to force her back into the car. But if that's it, that's not Wilder because he worked alone, as far as we know.
Well,
So it could have been someone. It either could have been
this was
someone
in
else.
America or this was in Australia?
We're in Miami.
I mean, his business partner was so lackadaisical.
I don't think it was him. I don't think it was Kimbrell.
Okay.
There were rumors that he was tied, like when they started investigating his murders, there were rumors that he was tied to a group of traffickers called the Smith brothers, but they never found any concrete evidence
Okay.
that was the case. But perhaps because Rosario has never been found. But they did see him talking to someone who matched Christopher Wilder's description. And there were photos of Christopher Wilder because the Grand Prix is such a heavily photographed event. There were photos of and evidence that he was there on the day Rosario disappeared. And apparently it was also found out that they had met before. In 1982, they had met at a fashion show and he had done a photo shoot with her that he told her was for a romance novel cover. And she went home and told her fiance about it. She's like, it's so weird. I just did this photo shoot for a romance novel cover. And I don't know. The guy was kind of strange, but oh well, I got paid. And she never heard from him again. She never saw the romance novel cover, but it's thought that he spotted her there and then approached her. And apparently he had approached another girl and offered a girl a modeling job that same day. And he was trying to get her to meet him somewhere. And she was like, okay, I have to borrow my parents' car. So she called her parents and they were like, no, we're not loaning you our car to go have a modeling gig with some man we don't know. And she was like, Mom and Dad, you never let me do what I want. And so he called this girl back or got in contact with her. And she said, I can't come. My parents won't let me use their car. And he said, take a taxi. And she wouldn't. She's like, no, I'm just not going to do it. And so they think that then he approached Rosario. So they gave her sister Lisette a polygraph test because they wanted to make sure that Rosario hadn't run away and told Lisette. And Lisette said it was really rough, that they made her cry, that they yelled at her. But by the end, they were satisfied that Lisette did not know anything.
Oh my gosh.
Bill, her fiance Bill, and the parents just searched tirelessly for Rosario and like just never recovered.
You never get over something like this.
So Elizabeth, let's go back to Elizabeth Kenyon. Around this time, Elizabeth's parents were coming down from their house in New York to stay at their house in Pompano Beach, and Elizabeth's brother Bill was flying in. And the date of this was around March 4th, 1984. So Rosario went missing on February 26, 1984. And remember that that Christopher had offered Elizabeth a job for late February 1984. And then he had tried to get another girl to do a job for late February 1984. And then Rosario went missing, who was also, in the modeling business. Beth met her parents at the airport on March 4th. And she lived about an hour south. She met with them. They all got together at the parents' house. They hung out. And then she drove the hour back down to Miami. And her brother remembers saying, be careful on the freeway. And then that night on the news, they all saw the report of Rosario Gonzalez's disappearance. And one thing the brother noted was, wow, that girl looks like Elizabeth. That could be Elizabeth. The next night, Beth didn't show up to the family dinner. And they just said that was just, there was no way she was going to miss family dinner. Her little niece was there and they were all she was about to take her first steps. So they called her roommate, and the roommate said she didn't know where Beth was. This is Monday night. The next day, Beth didn't show up for work. So on Tuesday, Beth didn't show up for work. So her parents had flown in Sunday night. They had family dinner. Monday, she went to work, was a normal day at work, never showed up at her parents' thing. Her roommate said she never came home Monday night, and then Tuesday didn't show up for work. Gosh. So the Kenyons reported this to the police, and the police just didn't really do much. They were like, that thing where they're like, we can't do anything. She's an adult woman. She might have just gone off somewhere. So they hired a private detective, and the private detective they hired two private detectives. The first one did a couple days of research and came back, and he's like, well, all I can tell you is you have a really nice daughter. That's all he found out. So they hired this other agency. I wrote the name down wrong. It's not Whitskirt. I was typing so fast. Ken Whittington or something like that, or something Whit. So they hired.
It starts with a W as in Whitskirt.
They hired this detective, and he Whittington, but not Whittington, but something like that. He immediately got to work and started tracking stuff down. He went to the school. He interviewed all of the high school cheerleaders, because the last place she had actually been seen was after school at cheerleading practice. And he was like, do you remember her saying she was going on a date? Do you remember saying she was going anywhere? And one girl remembered that she was going to get her car looked at the gas station a couple blocks away. So he goes to the gas station and he has a picture of Beth and he shows the picture to the clerk. And the clerk was like, oh yeah, she was here Monday afternoon. And she was gassing up and then some guy showed up and it seemed like they knew each other. And I was out there finishing and the man had said to her, hey, look, we're running late. And then he started to wash her window and Elizabeth said, don't bother. We have to get to the airport. And then she turned to the man and said, how do I look? Do I look the part? And he said yes. And then they paid for the gas. The man paid for the gas with a $20 bill. And then they left. So they then gathered photos of all of the men that Elizabeth had been romantically involved with and brought them to the clerk and said, do you recognize any of these men? And the man the clerk immediately pointed to Christopher Wilder and said, that's absolutely the man that she was with.
Oh my gosh.
So Wilder is now the lead suspect in Elizabeth Kenyon. She went by Beth, her disappearance. The police call him and he's just aghast. Like, he's just like, wow, how could you accuse me? He calls the parents and he's like, what's going on? You know me and I know you. How could you think I would have anything to do with this? Also, they had called him the day that they knew she was missing to say Beth's missing. And his response was like, well, what do you want me to do? Like, his response was not one of worry, which they thought was weird. He was like, what? Like,
what do you want me to do about it? Yeah.
Like, what do you do about it? Like, really weird, where he had been someone who was so affectionate with her and seemed to care that they were shocked that he wasn't like, oh my gosh, I'll drop everything. I'll come help.
How can I help?
Yeah. So he had a serious lack of emotion, but he agreed to meet with the detective or with the PI the next day. And the PI asked him to call the Kenyans. So he called the Kenyans again and was like, why do you have this guy on my back? Instead of like, he's like, call the Kenyans, let them know it wasn't you. And instead he called them and said, why do you have this guy like accusing me of kidnapping your daughter?
Oh my gosh.
So the guy shows up, the detective, Ken Whitskirt.
Ken W. Let's just call him Ken W.
Ken W. Shows up at the meeting and Chris isn't there. And he, the house is open. He goes in and he looks for him. Chris isn't there. The house is pretty much vacant.
Oh,
like his stuff is still there, but there's no sign of Chris.
Could it possibly be Whitaker?
It could be. Are you looking up Ken?
I'm trying to.
I like Whitskirt.
It might be Whitaker.
Okay.
It could be Whitaker.
I like Whitskirt.
So at this point too, they had started to make the connection between the disappearance of Rosario and Elizabeth's disappearance, and the news started to pay attention and the police started to realize that Elizabeth was actually a case to be looked into. So
it was Whitaker, by the way. Whitaker.
It was Whitaker? Good job.
Whitaker.
It's not Whitskirt. It's Whitaker. So Elizabeth Kenyon's parents tried to get the FBI involved, but the FBI was like, we can't because this hasn't crossed state lines. Apparently for the FBI to get involved, it needs to be in multiple states.
There's certain criteria, yeah.
But don't you fret, that's coming.
Ooh.
So right before Christopher disappeared, a reporter had released an article basically giving Christopher's entire description without releasing his name. She had gotten a tip from a cop that they were pretty sure they knew who the suspect was for Rosario Gonzalez and Elizabeth Kenyon's disappearance, and that while she couldn't name names, he was a race car driver who drove a 911 white Porsche and who was from Australia. Like, it was clearly him. So she basically clued him into that he was the lead suspect by releasing this article, which is why it's so to release things to the press, because he took off.
Oh, idiot.
He took off.
And he has fled successfully so many times.
Yeah. Now, the next part two of this, is when Christopher Wilder goes on his killing spree. So I think this is where we'll split the episode. Tune in next week to hear about
Christopher Wilder, part 2.
And Ken Whitskirt. Whitskirt.
Tune in next week and you'll get to hear the second part of the Christopher Wilder story about his killing spree.
Oh my gosh.
Now that we know all about his MO, which is M as in Mancy, O as in operandi.
Yeah. Oh, as in possum.
I thought you were being serious.
If any of you have questions, comments, or corrections, email us at
thespookydarlings@gmail.com. That's thespookydarlings, all one word, @gmail.com.
Please give us a 5-star rating and review. And we just appreciate our listeners. Thank you for listening.
If you or anyone you know has had an experience with Christopher Wilder, like a near experience, maybe he approached your mom or your grandma or you, please write in and let us know. And I would say that goes with any killer
yeah,
of the serial nature or otherwise.
just tell us your stories, guys. Crazy, creepy.
Tell us about your encounters.
Tune in next Tuesday, and until then, lock your doors. Seriously, lock your doors. There are creeps like Christopher Wilder out there. Stay safe, stay curious, and stay spooky, darling. 5 stars. Before we disappear into the shadows, don't forget, we're still sending out vinyl stickers. Leave us a rating and review and email us proof to thespookydarlings@gmail.com, along with your mailing address, and we'll send you some spooky snail mail while supplies last. And if your heart is still mourning that tote bag, may we gently tempt your way toward our merch store at thespookydarlings.printful.me. Treat yourself. You deserve it. Thanks for listening. And as always, stay spooky.